In the middle of the Sahara Desert, where sky meets earth, Burkina Faso leader Traoré's vehicle came to a halt. The GPS wasn't working. Water was running low, and there wasn't a single person in sight until an old man appeared from the depths of the desert holding a staff wearing an ancient robe. No one could have guessed that this man was Traoré's father, whose very existence he had once doubted. The sun bore down mercilessly on the military jeep that sat motionless on the vast expanse of sand. Inside, Ibrahim Traoré, leader of Burkina Faso, wiped sweat from his brow as he studied the useless GPS device. What had begun as a simple detour on his return from a regional security meeting had become a potentially life-threatening situation. His driver and lone security officer had gone to check what was causing the vehicle to overheat, leaving Traoré alone with his thoughts and the unrelenting desert heat. "We need to conserve water," Traoré murmured to himself, rationing his remaining bottle. Military training had taught him the essentials of survival, but even he knew their situation was precarious. The scheduled flight back to Ouagadougou would leave without him if they didn't reach the airstrip soon, and nobody knew they had taken this desert shortcut. Pride had prevented him from bringing his full security detail, a decision he now regretted. Through the shimmering heat waves, he suddenly spotted movement on the horizon. A figure, impossibly distant yet approaching steadily, appeared as a shadow against the bright desert landscape. Traoré's military instincts kicked in. He reached for his handgun, scanning the area for any signs of an ambush. This region was known for bandits and extremist groups that moved freely across the porous borders between Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. As the figure grew closer, details began to emerge. An elderly man walking with the aid of a wooden staff, wrapped in traditional desert robes that billowed gently in the hot breeze. How anyone could navigate this barren landscape on foot seemed impossible. The man moved with the unhurried pace of someone familiar with the desert's harshness, someone who respected rather than feared it. Traoré's driver and security officer returned, also noticing the approaching figure. "Sir, we should leave immediately," the security officer advised, tension evident in his voice. "The radiator is damaged, but might hold if we don't push the engine. This could be a trap." Traoré considered the warning but couldn't take his eyes off the approaching elder. There was something disturbingly familiar about the man's gait, the way he held himself, something that stirred long-buried memories. "Wait," Traoré commanded, stepping out of the vehicle. Despite his security officer's protest, the desert heat hit him like a physical force, but he stood his ground as the old man approached. Now only 20 minutes separated them, and Traoré could see his face, weathered by years of desert life, eyes sharp and knowing beneath a furrowed brow. The old man stopped, regarding Traoré with an intensity that felt like a physical weight. "Ibrahim," the old man said simply, his voice carrying easily across the distance between them. No title, no formality, just his given name, spoken with the authority of someone who had earned the right to such familiarity. Traoré felt the blood drain from his face. He knew that voice, though it had been decades since he'd heard it. It was impossible. A mirage born of heat and exhaustion. "Who are you?" Traoré demanded, though in his heart, an answer was already forming, one he had never expected to confront, especially not here, in the emptiness of the Sahara. The old man smiled slightly, the expression crinkling the corners of his eyes. "You know who I am, my son. Though I understand your disbelief, the dead should remain dead, should they not?" Ibrahim Traoré, his father, the revolutionary who had disappeared when Ibrahim was only 7 years old, reportedly killed during a failed coup. Against the dictatorship that had ruled Burkina Faso at the time, his body had never been recovered, leading to years of painful uncertainty that his mother had finally resolved by holding a symbolic funeral. Ibrahim had grown up with only fading memories and second-hand stories of a father who had sacrificed everything for his political convictions. "This is impossible," Ibrahim said, aware that his security officer and driver were watching the exchange with mounting confusion. "Ibrahim Traoré died 30 years ago." The old man nodded slowly. That is what the world was meant to believe. That is what you needed to believe for your own safety. He gestured toward the vast desert around them. We do not have much time. A storm is coming. If you wish to live, if you wish to understand, you must come with me now. As if to emphasize his warning, a gust of wind swept across the dunes, sending spirals of sand into the air. In the distance, the sky had taken on an ominous yellowing hue, the unmistakable sign of an approaching sandstorm. Ibrahim's security officer stepped forward. Sir, we need to seek shelter immediately. The vehicle won't protect us if a major storm hits. The old man pointed his staff toward a distant ridge. My camp lies 2 kilometers in that direction. Solid shelter, water, food. You will not reach the airstrip before the storm hits. He looked directly at Ibrahim. The choice is yours, my son, but it must be made quickly. Ibrahim hesitated only briefly. The rational part of his mind screamed that this was madness. Following a stranger claiming to be his dead father into the desert. Yet something deeper, more instinctive, recognized the truth in those weathered features. We go with him, Ibrahim decided, ignoring the protest forming on his security officer's lips. Gather what supplies you can carry. We move now. The old man nodded once, then turned and began walking toward the ridge, his pace surprisingly brisk for his apparent age. As they followed, the wind continued to strengthen, and the yellow-orange wall of the approaching sandstorm loomed larger on the horizon. They walked in silence, Ibrahim's mind racing with questions he couldn't yet bring himself to ask. If this man truly was Ibrahim Traore, where had he been for 30 years? Why reveal himself now? And how had he found Ibrahim in the vastness of the desert? The coincidence seemed too great, unless it wasn't a coincidence at all. The security officer moved closer to Ibrahim, speaking in a low voice. Sir, this could still be a trap. We should be prepared. Ibrahim nodded almost imperceptibly. He hadn't survived multiple coup attempts by being naive. Yet something told him the danger they faced wasn't from the old man, but from the approaching storm that now dominated the skyline behind them. The wind had risen to a constant howl, stinging their exposed skin with sand particles. Just as Ibrahim was beginning to question their chances of reaching shelter in time, they crested a small rise, and the old man's camp came into view. Camp was perhaps too modest a term. Nestled against the base of rocky outcroppings was a small compound, several sturdy structures built from local stone, nearly invisible against the surrounding landscape unless you knew exactly where to look. A natural windbreak provided by the rocks created a small oasis of calm amidst the gathering storm. The old man led them directly to the largest structure, pushing aside a heavy woven door covering. Inside was cool and surprisingly comfortable. Rugs covered the stone floor, simple but functional furniture, shelves lined with books and handcrafted items. A small fire burned in a central pit, its smoke drawn upward through a cleverly designed chimney. The space spoke of permanence, of decades spent refining and improving a desert dwelling. Please sit, the old man offered, gesturing to cushions arranged around the fire. The storm will pass by morning. We are safe here. Ibrahim's driver and security officer exchanged glances, their discomfort evident. Search the compound, Ibrahim instructed them quietly. Make sure we are truly alone. They nodded, relieved to have a task that would allow them to assess their situation. As they left, the old man smiled wryly, cautious. Good. That is how you have survived this long. He moved to a corner of the room, returning with a clay pitcher and cups. Water, clean and cool. Ibrahim accepted the cup but didn't drink immediately. You understand my skepticism, he said, studying the man who claimed to be his father. Up close, the resemblance was undeniable. The same high forehead, the same distinctive pattern of lines around the eyes that Ibrahim saw in the mirror each morning, features that had begun to appear in his own face as he aged. Ibrahim Traore disappeared during the coup of 1989. His companions confirmed his death. The old man settled himself across from Ibrahim, his movements deliberate and unhurried. His companions saw what they were meant to see. A man, blood, confusion. It was chaos, as such moments always are. He sipped from his cup. The military government wanted me dead, but some within their ranks feared making me a martyr. So a different solution was arranged. Exiled deep in the desert, where I could harm no one, inspire no one. Ibrahim leaned forward, anger suddenly flaring. And your family? Your wife? Your son? Did we not deserve to know the truth? The old man's expression revealed deep pain, the first crack in his composed demeanor. You deserved a father. Your mother deserved her husband. But my presence in your lives would have marked you for death. The regime watched you for years, waiting for me to make contact. Your safety depended on my death being real, to you most of all. Outside, the storm had fully arrived, wind howling as it battered the stone walls of the shelter. The sound provided a dramatic backdrop to the emotional storm brewing inside. My mother mourned you until her death, Ibrahim said, his voice low and... How could you possibly know these details? I am not alone in my work, Amidou said simply. There are others who share my concerns, who provide information. A network of our own, you might say. The implications were staggering. For years, Ibrahim had navigated the treacherous waters of regional politics, never fully knowing whom he could trust. This journal potentially identified both enemies and allies, if the information was accurate. Why didn't you find a way to share this before now? Why wait until a chance encounter in the desert? Amidou's expression hardened. It was no chance encounter, Ibrahim. Your sudden decision to take the desert route rather than the main road, the mechanical failure in your vehicle. These were orchestrated, not by me, but by those who wish you harm. Your standard security protocols were known, your movements tracked. You were meant to die in this desert. Another tragic accident to be mourned before your replacement takes power. Ibrahim's mind raced, recalculating the events of the past 24 hours. The suggestion to take the shorter desert route had come from his transportation coordinator. The driver had been assigned at the last minute, a replacement for his regular staff. Small deviations from standard procedure that in isolation raised no alarms. And you? He asked his father. How did you know I would be here? I have friends in many places, Amidou replied. When I learned of the plan, I positioned myself to intercept you. I had hoped to warn you before you left the main road, but events moved too quickly. He leaned forward, his expression grave. Ibrahim, this was to be the first attempt, not the last. The names in that journal, they are powerful people with significant resources. They will try again. Ibrahim closed the journal, his decision made. I need to verify this information independently. Amidou nodded in understanding. Trust, but verify. I taught you that as a child, though you may not remember. He smiled faintly. I don't ask for your forgiveness, Ibrahim. I don't ask for a place in your life. I ask only that you examine what I've given you with an open mind. The future of our homeland may depend on it. The storm continued throughout the night, forcing the small group to remain in the shelter. Ibrahim spent the hours reviewing the journal in detail, occasionally consulting with his security officer about specific names or incidents mentioned. When he slept, it was briefly and lightly, always aware of the old man who claimed to be his father, sitting silently on the other side of the fire, watching over him as if making up for decades of absence. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving a transformed landscape of fresh dunes and cleared skies. Ibrahim stood outside the shelter, watching the sunrise paint the desert gold. Amidou joined him, maintaining a respectful distance. Your vehicle can be repaired with materials I have here, he said. You can reach the airstrip by midday if you leave soon. Ibrahim nodded, still looking at the horizon. And you? Where will you go? Amidou gestured vaguely toward the endless desert. Back to my work. There is still much to be done. He hesitated, then added, Ibrahim, there is something else you should know. Something personal. Ibrahim turned to face him, bracing himself for further revelations. You have a sister, Amidou said quietly. Your mother was pregnant when I left. She was born 6 months after my disappearance. Ibrahim stared at his father, shocked into silence. His mother had never mentioned a pregnancy. A sister, another secret buried beneath the weight of national politics and personal tragedy. Her name is Aminata, Amidou continued. She was raised in a village near the Mali border, with a family your mother trusted. She doesn't know who her father is or that her brother leads our nation. I've watched over her from a distance, as I watched over you. Why tell me this now? Ibrahim asked, when he finally found his voice. Amidou's expression was solemn. Because she is in danger too. Those who seek to control Burkina Faso know of her existence, though they don't yet realize her significance. They see her only as an educated young woman working on water access projects in rural communities. But if they discover her connection to you, they will use her. Where is she now? Ibrahim demanded, the protective instinct for a sister he'd never known surging unexpectedly. Working. In a village called Jibo near the northern border, Amidou replied. I was headed there when I learned of the threat against you. He reached into his robe, producing a small carved wooden box. This contains proof of her identity, birth documentation, a letter from your mother, photographs, enough to convince you and her of the truth. Ibrahim accepted the box, feeling its weight. Not just the physical weight, but the weight of history, of secrets finally coming to light. His world had been upended in the span of a single night. A father returned from the dead. A sister he never knew existed. Enemies with faces and names, some terrifyingly familiar. Why did mother never tell me? He asked, the question directed more at himself than Amidou. To protect you both, Amidou answered. Anyway, separated, you were safer. United, you would have been an irresistible target, the children of a revolutionary, symbols around which opposition could rally. He looked away toward the distant horizon. Your mother made difficult choices, as did I. Whether they were the right choices, that is for history to judge. Ibrahim's driver approached respectfully, announcing that the vehicle was repaired and ready. Time was running short. Ibrahim turned to his father, studying the face that had haunted his dreams as a child. You could come with us, he offered, surprising himself with the invitation. Return to Ouagadougou with proper security, proper precautions. Amidou smiled but shook his head. My return would only complicate your position. You face enough challenges. Without explaining a resurrected revolutionary father, then how will I contact you? Ibrahim asked. If I verify this information? If I need to know more? Amidou reached out slowly, hesitantly, placing a weathered hand on his son's shoulder. The first physical contact between them in 3 decades. Leave. A white stone on your mother's grave on the first day of each month. If it's gone the next day, come to this place on the following full moon. I will find you. The moment of departure arrived too quickly. As Ibrahim prepared to leave, Amidou stood at the entrance to his compound, leaning on his staff, looking suddenly older and more vulnerable than he had the previous day. Ibrahim, he called, as his son was about to enter the vehicle. I have one. Request. Ibrahim turned back. I didn't have the right to be proud of the boy you were, but I want you to know that I am immensely proud of the man you've become. The journey back to the airstrip passed in contemplative silence. Ibrahim was absorbed in thoughts that ranged from the personal to the political and back again. The journal and wooden box sat beside him, tangible evidence of a reality he was still struggling to accept. His security officer, loyal but concerned, finally spoke. Sir, regarding what happened, how should I report it? Ibrahim considered the question carefully before responding. For now, you will report that we experienced vehicle trouble during a sandstorm and took shelter with a local guide who helped us make repairs, he decided. Nothing about the man's identity, nothing about the information he provided, until I've had opportunity to verify independently. The officer nodded, understanding the need for discretion. And if asked directly, "Sir, about the 3 days we were missing?" 3 days. It had seemed like hours, yet somehow also a lifetime. 3 days is how long it takes to truly see someone, Amidou had told him before they parted. 1 day to see their face, another to see their mind, a third to glimpse their soul. Ibrahim looked out at the desert stretching endlessly around them. If asked directly, he replied, "Say only that I encountered something unexpected in the desert, something that changed my perspective." As their vehicle approached the airstrip, the waiting government plane visible in the distance, Ibrahim made a decision. Instead of heading directly back to Ouagadougou, he would make an unscheduled detour to a small village called Djibo, near the northern border, to meet a sister he never knew he had. To begin unraveling the truth of his family, his nation, and the forces that threatened both. The journey that had begun in the middle of a sandstorm was far from over. In many ways, it was just beginning.